Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Modesto Junior College. I apologize for the late start. We were having a couple technical difficulties that we've worked out. My name is Brian Justin Marks. I am the Associate Dean of Campus Life. And on behalf of the college and our Campus Life Department, we welcome you. We are very thrilled to see over 70 of you in the audience tonight, which plans to be a very special evening. Our Positive Speakers Series is an exciting new adventure for our Campus Life and Modesto Junior College area. We love seeing the community out. It's always wonderful when we're able to have speakers come in at a high caliber level, but the reason for creating this process in the speaker series is to show people that right here in our own county, in our own Stanislaus County, our own area, San Joaquin area, we have thousands upon thousands of people who are heroes every day. They don't end up on TV, they don't end up in the newspaper, and tonight's speaker is no different from that. Many of you know in the audience know who he is. I think you're in for an exciting treat. I've had the good fortune of knowing Demitius now for over a decade, and I can tell you without any doubt he is one of our finest employees and one of our best teachers, if not the best teacher at Modesto College. So without further ado, Demitrius Snaer, our keynote speaker tonight.
I know. Thank you. Hello. Oh man, it's funny because I know most of you guys have probably been on campus and you've seen these huge posters of my face all throughout campus, probably scaring you, probably just making you frightened while you're trying to have lunch and all that. You guys can thank Brian for that. Every single day, someone new comes up to me and says, "Hey, I saw you on campus," and "Where'd you see me?" "I saw you on the wall next to Brian." So thanks a lot for that huge picture of me. So, keeping to that theme, I decided to put another big picture of me up on the PowerPoint here. It's funny because when I was reading basically the little synopsis of what was going to be going on tonight, I was reading all the things that Brian had said. He's a former All-American, former state champion, all these things, and it got me thinking to an incident that happened with my daughter's basketball team. Her coach came up to me before practice one day and he goes, "Hey, Demetrius, I don't think these kids here realize, the accomplishments that you've had in track and field and in sports and all of that. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take a second to speak to all of our athletes and talk to them about hard work, dedication, and all those things." So I said, "Okay, for sure, definitely." So he goes up and he tells all the kids, "Okay, everyone get in a circle," and then he starts saying, "We have this very special person that is going to speak to you guys today." And he's like, he's an All-American, he's a Hall of Famer, he's been a state champion, he's been a national champion, he's one of the top athletes in the area, and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, "Here he is, Demitrius Snaer." And I walk out there and I talk to all the kids, and it's fun, they're all enjoying it and everything. We get home, or actually we're in the car ride back, and my daughter goes, "Man, Daddy, it's funny." Goes, when Coach Manny came up and he was saying, "We have this great athlete and he's an All-American and he's done all these great things." She's like, "I was sitting there, I was so excited. I was like, oh, it's about to be Steph Curry." And I'm like, and then she's like, "And then it was just you," and all the kids were clapping, and I was like, "Well, that's just my dad, And then she said, "And I knew it was going to be the same boring stories that you tell all the time." And what's funny is that I'm about to tell the same boring stories that I tell all the time that she has sat through, and she's sitting through it again. So tonight I'll probably hear more about that. But one thing that said in that synopsis was that I was going to speak about my humble beginnings leading to where I am today. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, humble beginnings? What? I didn't really understand what Brian meant by humble beginnings, by humble, the term humble. I went from humble beginnings to where I am today. So I actually had to kind of look up the word. Not that I didn't know what it meant, but I was trying to think in the context of myself, what did he mean by humble beginnings? So I looked it up. And by the way, Brian, this is definitely going to be the title of my book, Humble Beginnings. So I hope you're okay with me stealing that. So I looked it up, and humble, the word humble itself, it's an adjective, and it means, the first definition was having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. And if you know me, that's not me at all. I definitely feel like I'm important. So I thought, that's not what he means. So then I look at this second definition that says a low social, administrative, or political rank. And I thought, I don't know. I mean, maybe. So then I had to delve a little deeper, and then I saw this term, and it said lowly. And I thought, nah, that's not me. I'm not quite lowly. I just don't feel like that's me. And then it said undistinguished. And I thought, again, if you know me, I'm not undistinguished. Then I saw mean, never. Okay, maybe if you ask my daughters and my wife and some of my athletes, maybe I shouldn't say never, but definitely not mean. Modest. All right, if you know me, am I modest? Probably not. Poor. Oh, poor. I get it now. Humble means poor. Why didn't you just say poor, Brian? From poor, I guess poor beginnings doesn't really roll off the tongue as well as humble does. So, yes, I grew up, I guess, a little poor, right? I grew up, and so I guess kind of in a way, Brian kind of wants me to talk to you guys about how I went from kind of this guy here, who, that is an actual picture of me in high school, dancing at graduation, which embarrassed the heck out of my mother. She gave me a tongue lashing for that. How I went from this guy who just thought anytime there was a stage, I should be on it. And needless to say, here I am. And then to this guy who wore bandanas all the time. In every single newspaper clipping, there was a bandana. And then this guy with the 2 hoop earrings. Can you believe it that just literally a week or 2 ago, my daughter said to me, Daddy, do you know you have a second hole in your left ear? I said, of course I know. I put it there. So I used to wear these huge hoops that my daughters are probably so embarrassed of. But this was me. So I think he wants me to get you from there to, I guess, this distinguished gentleman here. So yeah, we grew up a little poor. In my neighborhood, we were poor, so poor that, and I shouldn't say so poor that sounds like the start of a joke, but we did grow up poor. And so we made up games in my neighborhood. So we had this game that we played, it was called Cool Can. And I don't know if, I'm sure none of you have heard of this game. I don't know really why it was called Cool Can, except for we used cans to play this game. So what I did was I brought a couple cans because I really miss playing this game. I can't even believe I haven't taught my daughters how to play this game, but it is a very fun game. So, and this would be probably, a good time if you guys need to stand up and take a selfie for your Snapbook, chat, Instagram, whatever it is, or something like that. But we had these cans here. And then I'm going to call Moises up here, and I'm going to call Kaz up here. You guys come on up here. Give them a round of applause for coming up, for volunteering to come up. They didn't realize by sitting up front, they were volunteering to come up. So literally in my neighborhood, you would just go to a house because the houses were made with wood and the siding was like panels like this kind of. You would literally just pull one of these off of a house in my neighborhood and you would play Cool Can with this. I had to actually go to Home Depot and buy this because you can't do that in my neighborhood these days. So Moises is going to go and stand over there. And Kaz is going to go and stand over there with this ball right here. Okay, go ahead and stand over there, Kaz. And so the concept of this game was, Kaz already knocked down my can, was that Moises would be on my team, Kaz would be standing behind him. Kaz would try to throw that ball to hit these 3 cans here, okay? If Kaz threw the ball, and I'm going to have Kaz throw the ball to me real soft, Kaz, don't try to be a hero. I haven't played this game in 25 years. If you make me look bad, it's bad for you, okay? All right, so Kaz would throw this ball. I would hit the ball as hard as I can, as far as I can into the neighborhood. And then Moises and I would run back and forth. Moises, run that way. And we would touch this box as many times as we could until they retrieved the ball and then came and knocked those cans down. As long as my stick was in this box here, he couldn't knock the cans down. But if I were in between running, he could knock the cans down and then it would be their turn. And that was just a game that we played. Let's throw it one time just so I could see if I'm any good at this. Let's see. Go ahead. That's why I never played baseball. That's why I'm a track athlete. All right, you guys go ahead and sit down. Thank you. That was a made-up game. Now, that game was kind of fun. But there was this other game that we had that we made up in the hood, I'm going to call it. We had this game called Humpty Head. I have no idea why this game was called Humpty Head. At least with Cool Can, it kind of makes sense. Humpty Head makes no sense at all. And this is a game you play when you don't have, access to as many video games and all that kind of stuff, right? So the way this game went was all the big guys in the neighborhood would get all the little guys in the neighborhood, and they would tell us, go out, run and hide, okay? So we would go and run and hide. This sounds a lot like hide and seek, right? We'd go run and hide. Once we were hidden, we would yell Humpty Head, okay? When we yelled Humpty Head, that gave them the cue to come and try and find us, okay? Here's the twist where it's nothing like hide and seek at all, okay? When they found us, they had the authority to punch us and then punch us again, and then they might elbow us, then they might kick us, then they might knee us, and then they might flying knee us, and then they might judo throw me, and then they might just ground and pound me until I literally look like this. Seriously, some days my face literally looked like this. Some of you are saying, why would you play that game? You didn't choose to play Humpty Head. You got bullied into playing Humpty Head. And don't say, why didn't you tell your mom? You can't tell your mom. And don't say, why didn't you hide? Because they would find you the next day. That was just it. You couldn't get away from playing Humpty Head. So that was kind of a part of growing up in that neighborhood. Not to date myself too much, but in our neighborhood, we also had these corner stores. They would sell what we called penny candy. And I don't know if anyone in here is old enough to remember penny candies or even had that in their neighborhood. But penny candies basically meant that you walk into a store with 50 pennies and you walk out with 50 pieces of candy. Sometimes you walk in the store with 50 pennies and you walk out with 100 pieces of candy. How does that happen? Some people were thieves. Not me, believe me, and this is foreshadowing. I had a mother that I was deathly afraid of, so I really didn't try to steal. But again, it's foreshadowing. We'll get back to that. So that was kind of our neighborhood. Now, what got me here to California? I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. I had a father who was an owner of a bar, or his parents owned the bar, and he kind of ran the bar. My mom will definitely fix all these mistakes I'm making if you guys want to ask her questions later. But my father was abusive, and abusive to the point that we would move away from him. And so I remember at a young age moving to another side of town in New Orleans. I remember moving at least 3 or 4 times, and every time we moved, my father would somehow find us and work his way back into our household. And then there came a time which I consider the defining moment in my life when my mom told us late at night that we were going to be moving. And this time we were going to be moving farther away, that our father would never be able to find us. And so the way I remember it was packing as much stuff as I could into a bag or two, and then moving out of the house sort of in the middle of the night, getting on a plane and flying to San Francisco, California, and then moving to Manteca, California with my uncle. Okay, and again, growing up in a household where your father's abusive, and not to go too deep into it, but the kind of abuse that you wouldn't want to see as a kid. And I remember waking up one time in the middle of the night and actually hearing and seeing some of these things going on. So I have a pretty vivid memory of some of those things, but I was a little bit young. So at about the age of 13, we moved here to Manteca, California. The biggest thing I can remember about the move to Manteca and living at my uncle's house was his backyard. I don't know why, it was just the worst in the world, because he had this backyard that literally looked like this at all times. Okay, just weeds everywhere. And we always had to go and pull weeds. It was like every weekend he would wake you up, Demitrius. You see. He would always say that. I don't know why he would say you see, but it was always in that. It was you see, and then you see, And then there was nothing to do with seeing anything at all. It was, now we're going outside for you to pull the weeds. So it was, you see, we're going outside to pull weeds. So I remember thinking when I was a kid, like, I want to be as determined about being successful in life as these weeds are determined about just seeing the light and getting through the cracks and all of that. Because if you think about a weed and how resilient they are, I mean, you see weeds everywhere. What is it about weeds that no matter how much you pull them, you spray them, you pray about them, you cuss at them, you perform exorcisms on them, it doesn't matter what you do, they are back a couple of days later. So if you look at this backyard, and I'm not kidding you, this looks exactly like my Uncle Anthony's backyard. But you think about weeds, and it's like they grow through cracks. Weeds grow where there's not any other greenery at all. There's just literally none, okay? They always make it through. Weeds are growing in the hood, on the sidewalk. There's no trees. There's nobody watering it. They just grow everywhere. Think about the life of a weed. Imagine the resilience it takes to be a weed and actually make it through a crack or make it through a sidewalk. Weeds just don't give up. And so I thought of myself kind of like a weed, like I'm never going to give up, okay? When you think about them as well, you think about how, if you think about a weed, you think about how it's different from a flower, right? None of us really want to be weeds, right? Weeds are like, they get no love at all. They get no nourishment. They don't get hugged. They probably are allowed to just cry all the time. No one says, I love you to them. As a matter of fact, weeds are like Kanye, right? Like just mad, like think about it. You see a weed and you go, oh gosh, weeds. That's how people are when they see Kanye. Oh gosh, it's Kanye. Gosh, what is he gonna do today? Right? So that's what I think about a weed. But then there's flowers, right? Flowers get nourishment. They get love. They get taken inside. They get watered. They get to cuddle. You know, they get to watch Hulu and Netflix and just hang out. Maybe not all that. But I thought of myself as a weed. Because I thought, you know, when I saw other families and some of my friends and they had their dad there all the time and he was always there to do this and play catch with them and do all these things. And then there was me who didn't have that. So as I grew up, I thought of myself that way. But then I started to think and I thought, you know, maybe the difference between a weed and a flower is not really what I think. Because if you think about it, there are many, many weeds out there that we don't even know are weeds, we think are flowers. There are many beautiful, beautiful weeds out there. So one thing I didn't realize is that I was probably a flower or a weed that had blossomed into a flower the entire time. And what I mean by that is I had, for one, a mother who was there all the time. Maybe my father wasn't there. Maybe he wasn't able to be at all my games or my track meets and things like that, but I had a mother who was there. I mean, let me tell you about my mom, okay? There were times when she would tell me she wasn't coming to a track meet. I was in Edwardsville, Illinois one time, and my mom said, I can't make it to your track meet. And then all of a sudden she showed up. And my mom doesn't just show up to track meet, okay? I'm surprised she's not wearing a shirt today. My mom shows up to a track meet wearing a shirt that says, go Demitrius, you can do it. Demetrius' mom, and she yells loudly and just makes it be known that she is there for you. So she was always there, okay? I had this girlfriend in high school when I was a senior in high school who was a freshman, okay? I was in geometry my senior year. I had to retake it. There was this girl in the class with me. Don't laugh. She was a freshman taking the geometry class. I remember talking to her on the phone at night, and she would say, hey, did you do your geometry homework yet? And I would say, no. And before I could say anything else, the phone would hang up. And I'd say, I know she did not just hang up on me. So I'd pick up the rotary phone, and I'd dial it up again. I'd say, hey, you just hang up on me? She's like, yeah, call me when you get your homework done. I don't understand why you would keep showing up without doing your homework. So I married that girl. because, and so not only was my mom there nurturing me, but then I had a girlfriend nurturing me who, as my wife now would probably say, she still has to nurture me sometimes. I had coaches who would yell at me. One of my high school coaches would always, literally, if I got in trouble, he would show up to the principal's office and get me out of trouble. I'll tell you a story. I was in biology class once. This is something my mom doesn't even know. She's probably going to give me a spanking after this story. I'm in this biology class, and there is a term that I don't like being called. There's just a word. I'm not going to say it because there's young people in here, but it is a word like if you were to call someone a punk or a weakling, but it was just I'll tell some of you guys later. So this guy in class called me that word. So I said, if you call me that word again, I'm going to punch you in the face. And this is right in biology class. So I'm sitting in class, and he's sitting in front of me, and I hear punk, idiot, maybe 5 other words, and then I hear him whisper that word. And I literally just jumped up, turned around, punched him in the eye just like I said I would, and then I stood there and said, get up, let's go. And the biology teacher said, Snaer, go to the office right now. I went to the office. They called the track coach. He came in. He said, I'm going to take care of this. I'm not going to let him, because he understood that track was going to be kind of my vehicle out of these issues that I was having. Okay? Now, there was another time in my life that my mom kind of knows this story. My brother was lifting weights in the weight room, and he was always the strongest guy at the school. So I go, hey, can I get in a set? And he goes, we're doing sets of 10. If you don't do 10, I'm going to call you whatever, or you're a punk or whatever. And he said that word to me. So I get under the squat rack. I do 2. I put it back up there. And he says, you know what? You're that word. And I said, don't call me that word. And I don't even know why it's a big deal. And if I said it in here, every one of my athletes would probably try to call me that tomorrow. So I said, if you call me that word again, I'm going to punch you in the face. Well, one thing you don't know about my brother is he was also not just the strongest, but the toughest guy at the school as well. So he called me the word again. So I punched him in the face, thinking that the track coach would say, hey, don't fight. But the track coach instead says, hey, move everything out of the way. Let them fight. And I was thinking, oh, this is bad. And I swear to this day, all I remember was waking up 15 seconds later to people standing over me saying, you all right, you all right? And I look up and my brother's under the squat rack like nothing had ever happened. And back to a story. So the next day, we had a track meet. First of all, we get home. My eye is black. It's kind of fat. My mom goes, what happened to you? I said, I fell on a weight. She looks right at my brother and says, did you do that to him? And he said, no, I didn't. He fell on a weight. I saw it happen. The next day at the track meet, the track coach goes up to my mom and says, you really need to put Lamont in boxing. And my mom said, why? Did you see what he did to Demetrius? Now, why did I get a spanking that night also? Didn't I get enough from him? Why did I? We'll have to talk about that later, Mom. So that was just, my mother. That was just her way of nurturing us. And that was my coach's way of nurturing us. And some of you guys may be in that position too, where you think sometimes like a weed thinks, like a flower always knows. They can see mom, they can see dad, they can see teachers, coaches, counselors, support staff. They see all those people kind of nurturing them. Whereas a weed kind of doesn't see all of that. A weed thinks that all the decks are stacked against them, that the ball is never bouncing in their court, that things are always going against them. But I always had to remember that I did have that. It was just, not having a dad wasn't that much. It was because I had all these other support people in my life. I said I would talk about stealing. And I don't know why, Ma, I feel like I'm picking on you. But just because you're the reason why I'm here today. There was a time when I never would steal, but there was a time when we went to the store. I went to Sears with my mom, and we were all inside of Sears, myself, my brother, my sister, and my mom. There was this ring. My mom was taking a long time. My sister, they're shopping. There was this little ring, like those rings that you can just grab off of a counter. They were